Throw my phone back on airplane mode. Wait for the YouTube. Perfect. We are live. We are allowed on YouTube. It's tremendous. Okay, here we go. Here we go. Hello and welcome to the Mastermind Body and Spirit Show. I'm your host, Matt Belair. As you know, we are currently overcoming extreme censorship. They just let us back on YouTube again. If you want to support this show, please go over to mattbelair.com, become a member, share episodes as far and as wide as you can, leave a review, and most importantly, consider doing 3 kind acts wherever you are in the world today. Today's guest helps individuals expand their health and consciousness. He helps guide people on a journey to open their mind, honor their spirit, and hone their physical form. Welcome to the show, my friend Lee Davey.
My brother, so good to see you. So good to connect with you again, and thank you so much for all the work you're doing, and for having me on your show. It's been a while.
Yeah, brother, it's always so great to see you. You know, we go back to the brother bond of Egypt. You know,
Yeah.
both of us exploring the world and what's possible. And you've been on this road for a long time, the modern samurai and all the work that you've done in the past in health and wellness and consciousness. You're really an expert in the field. And one of them that's been able to endure the process, right? It's like, it's a lifelong journey. It's a lifelong pursuit. A lot of people will kind of like do health and wellness on the side or, things like that. You've really been pursuing it for a long time. So I definitely see you as a unique and a peer in that sense where not a lot of people are able to do that. And recently in your endeavors, you're always up to doing fascinating things. You've been studying or learning with the Kogi tribe, the Mamos, which are incredibly fascinating down in South America and doing a lot of interesting stuff. You're engaged with Foster and Kimberly Gamble and all the stuff they're doing over at Thrive Hub and things like that. So I'll shut up and get you to share a little bit about your background and like how you got to doing what you're doing in all the exploration, but also explaining, your studies with the Kogi and what you've been learning from them.
Yeah, man. Thank you. It has been a long journey in this lifetime, and it really I'll weave it all together because it really rang true when we were at one of the ancient sites with the Mamos, and they were talking about, this is how we get our information, and it was essentially like a giant stone in the middle of the rainforest, and it had all these like drawings and carvings on it and footprints, and it wasn't like it was poured cement or something. It was literally a huge stone in the center of the rainforest, and they're like, yeah, this is how we learn. This is where we get our knowledge from, and I'll talk more about that in a second because, like I said, it comes full circle. But for me, in this lifetime, it started at like 13 years old, and I was just like, okay, like we're told this story of, go to school, get good grades, get a job, work for 40, 50 years, retire if you have any semblance of health left. You get to enjoy your twilight years, and then, you're going to kick the bucket and that's it. And that really never sat with me. I'm just like, wait a minute, like, where's the truth here? Right. And that was kind of the first time at 13 years old, I was like, who am I? Like, what is all this? Right. And so that's led to, I'll let everybody guess how many years it's been, but it's been quite a few years of journeying and seeking where the truth is, and starting with, the gym and fitness and then nutrition and supplementation, and then martial arts and mindset and meditation and then breath work, and then the neurophysiological components and tons of medicine experiences. And what I've discovered, especially, over the last, I'll give you a hint, 20 years, has been that it has been a journey, and every step has led me closer to what truth is, right? And where there was those aspects of truth, it was like putting these pieces of this grand puzzle together of, who am I? Who are we? Why are we here? What is all of this? And the journey with the Mamos was just confirmation, and it literally led me back to the origin, they're the keepers of the origin of the earth. They live in the mountains of the Sierra Nevada in Colombia. And for the first time, they have come down from the mountain to share this knowledge with, they call us younger brother. And they tell this story. They tell everything by allegory, by story. And that's one of the things I love. And they're like, so they were entrusted with this wisdom and this piece of land. And I look at it like these concentric circles, right? And this wisdom is the origin. It is the natural order. It is making payments, both spiritual and physical, to the earth, asking for blessings, and then receiving those blessings and direction. And that connection is what we have really, really gotten away from in a really big way. And they say, essentially that is why there's so much chaos right now. That is why within, without, between each other, on the planet, with the weather, like it all comes down to making these payments. But they were entrusted with this information and this little piece of land. And then the natives were entrusted with other ancient sites and a little bit more land. And then younger brother, all the rest of us, they're like, you guys got the rest of it and you got to go and explore. But you were supposed to come back. You were supposed to come back to remember, right? And they're like, you never came back. And so we've forgotten this connection. We've forgotten this way of being. We've forgotten this way of life, this connection with the heart of the spirit of the world. And in that disconnection is what lies where all of the turmoil, where all of our problems really lie. And so they're like, you guys never came back, so we have to come down from the mountain to share this, because really there's no more time to waste. Like we need to come together. We need to come back to center. We need to come back, to understanding the depths of this connection with the planet, making these payments, making these offerings, receiving these blessings, so that we can move forward in the natural order and with the natural order. Like we can continue to build and do all the things that we're doing, as and a lot of things I feel with the communities that are spreading up and the land that's being purchased and the different platforms that are being built and the solutions that are here are done from a much better place than maybe they've been done in the past. But without that origin, without that connection to the earth, without the blessing and the payments, it's just literally another layer of crap on top of the current layer of crap that we've got.
Yeah, wow. Well, that's amazing, man. And I know that I know a little bit about the Kogi or Mamos. That's a synonym, right? Like they both mean the same thing.
Yeah, the Kogi is a like a specific tribe. So there were 4 tribes specifically that were entrusted with this knowledge, and the Kogi is one of them.
Okay, got it. So yeah, I had my first encounter when I was at the Mayan fire ceremony in Guatemala, and it was really fascinating that he said some of the similar things. There was a translator there, and it was very fascinating. And I'm curious if you can share a little bit about their background, because the way they live and how they grow up and what they do is really fascinating. Is it true that they spend the first 12 years of their life in darkness?
Yeah, it's like it's 7 to 12, I think, depending on which area of this knowledge they've been entrusted with. So we had two Mamos, Fernando and Mamos Artillo, and Artillo didn't say much. He was always walking the land and just connecting and making payments and yeah, just really like was like the lead, I guess, connector to the stones, to the trees. And so the 2 of them were connected, and then it was connected to the whole tribe back in Colombia, and they were tuning in to what payments we were supposed to make as a group, and we even got our earth names, which was so phenomenal. And then Mamo Fernando, he was obviously weaving, and they call it weaving when we're like making these payments and making this connection. Weaving with Mama Artillo and the others back in Colombia, but then he would actually speak into, you know, why they were there and what they were doing. And then the kind of the lead and the bridge to them was Candy Majo was his name. So he was kind of the lead facilitator, and is not considered a mamo, but understands their teachings. And so he's kind of the bridge into the mamo, the bridge out to us. And now we get to be essentially stewards or guardians of this journey that has now started. And there are going to be more opportunities to sit with the mamos, and more like retreat style events where we're going to be able to go and sit with them. And it was beyond any retreat that I've ever been to. Like typically, you know, you're doing lots of stuff, and then your breath work and maybe medicine and different things. And this was like, we were, for the majority of the time, we were sitting, listening, but what we were listening to was like an ancient language. And within that language carries a vibration, carries a frequency. So when that was happening, I was literally like, you know, they would say something in terminology, and I would kind of feel my body unlocking. And I think it's safe to say that the 20 of us that were there have been fully activated for this mission of, you know, going back to the origin of sharing this knowledge, of cross-pollinating, and reconnecting not only with the earth, but the Mamos and the native elders and tribes all over the planet.
Yeah, wow, that's amazing. And I heard that they've come down for the first time to share some of their ancient teachings. I'm assuming that they get passed down generationally, like from the other indigenous people that I've studied with. It's always passed down orally from generation to generation. And so the question I have from studying with you studying with them, why did they choose to come down now? What is their perception of what is happening now? And what are their solutions moving forward?
Well, they're they're essentially like, Mama Earth is not happy. Like she's pissed at us, right? Because we forgot, because we haven't made these payments, because you know, we've gotten so disconnected. And you know, if you look at primarily even just like the weather stuff, they'll go to a specific area and say like, well, the weather has changed here because, you know, this has been dug out and this has been put in and these trees have been planted when they're not indigenous, and right, so they're able to read the land in such a fascinating manner that it's like, you know, if we actually just repair and kind of start to put things back where they were supposed to be, which, I mean, that's obviously a big task, but we're going to start to regain a little bit of order. And then beyond that, as we learn and understand how to make these payments, and it's not that we would, like, younger brother would actually have to make all the payments ourselves, but this like cross-pollination with them, right, is going to allow them to make payments on our behalf, and then ask permissions and pass that back out to us. So what I'm feeling, and what, you know, a number of us are working towards, is the idea of a unification of sorts, right? So I'm co-stewarding with a dear friend of mine, Zagitas Bajornas. I think I said that right. Apology if I did, Zagitas. We're co-stewarding what we're calling the Unified Alliance. And the Unified Alliance essentially is a planetary call to coherent action. Right? There's all kinds of action being taken, but there's no coherence. And I feel like this speaks to coming back into the origin. Right. And so if you look at that outer circle and all the crypto platforms and communities and external energy devices and technologies and like all of the solutions that are being worked on from different communities and different organizations all over the planet, right? And then you look at that second circle that has all of the natives and their land and their ancient sites and their wisdom. And then you've got the third, which essentially is the Mamos and the Lamas, right? And so I've connected with the United Nations of Spirit, which is an organization that has, I'm not sure how many native tribes it has, but quite a few in South America. And so what we want to do is share that, bring more of the native elders from all over the planet into that organization, connect that with the Unified Alliance. The Unified Alliance is connected to all kinds of like the little brother organizations, the cryptos, and like all these other solutions. And what we really want to do is start the conversation between the first two circles and say, okay, like how can we start to weave back together? Like what information do the natives have, and what do they need, and what are the ancient sites, and start to combine that with the like what we've been entrusted with, which is the technology and some of the other lands and money and all that sort of thing. So it starts this cross-pollination of information, of resources, of tools to these first two circles. And all the while, the Mamos are going to be continuing to connect with us and kind of the initial like earth stewards that have been on this journey with them can start to disseminate that information out. So it becomes this like hybrid, cross-pollinating, systemic global call to coherent action in all that we're doing. And as the information from the outer circle flows to the inner circle, they're going to be able to make payments to the specific sites, to be able to get those permissions from the earth, and then they'll be able to pass that information back out to us so that we'll be able to take action based on a more orderly approach rather than just taking action. And that's kind of what is present in this moment. Who knows how it's all going to happen and come to fruition. I mean, there's so many moving parts and so many changes so rapidly right now, but I mean, that is, and so like so many organizations, so many people, right, that are like, yeah, like but then becomes, okay, what are all of the pieces and how do they fit together?
Yeah, wow. Well, that sounds amazing. And I think it's exciting to get connected to some more of the indigenous wisdom and to have them come down and be willing to share what they know and what they've learned and what they've held. And you know this from studying with the different indigenous teachers, is that the sacred sites have been there for thousands and thousands of years, and they use them for ritual, they use them for ceremony, they use them from all these different purposes. And what we know is that we don't know how they're built. There's a lot of speculation. It's very fascinating, but we a lot of people believe there's some sort of technology, and maybe this is part of that indigenous wisdom, is that passing that down orally of how to go to these different sacred sites. When I was with Clifford Mahudi in Zuni, Arizona, he said that, basically all the government sites, they would take over their sacred sites, right? So they'd block them away from their sacred sites. Then it would become a government site or a military site. And so they systematically ensured that the indigenous people could not go to their sacred sites, which maybe there is a technology, maybe there's an energy, maybe it's just like some water in the spiritual realm, right? Like we want to go to the stream, we go to water, maybe there's something going on there, but they would have access to this. And there must be a reason for it, because from the people that I trained with, they had a 20,000 year oral history. I'm not sure if you learned about how long their history went back, but I always thought that that was fascinating. Whether I was speaking to David Lonebear, the Mi'kmaq, Clifford
Mhm.
Mahudi of the Zuni, or Carlos Barrios, a Mayan elder, they all said 20,000 year oral history, which is really fascinating because it goes far beyond what we're taught, or the reality that we quote unquote know. And it seems like Western society is the one that's kind of trapped in the matrix. They're very disconnected from nature. They're disconnected from natural law. They're disconnected from spirit. They're in this virtual world, right? In an unnatural world for how we live and how we eat and how we interact with each other and how we feel. You know, some people can manage it okay, but when you look at, some of these cultures, like when I was traveling, I heard that, poorer cultures are on average happier. Well, when I observe that, if you're not in extreme poverty where you're dying of starvation, but you're in poverty, when I was in a lot of places, they actually genuinely were happier with absolutely nothing. Now, that's not always the case. You want to be able to have abundance, but I just thought that was fascinating to observe in real life. And so, um, yeah, do you know if they've spoken about the sacred sites or how we move forward with this? I guess either talk onto the rant if there's something that came up there, or I'll fire a question. But I'm curious how they view the sacred sites and if they speak on it at all.
They did, and to your point about the 20,000 years, they said about the same thing. Like this has been passed down orally from in within their lineage for for about the same period of time. And in terms of the sacred sites, so there are 533 in the Sierra Nevada. They have access to 33 of them. There are 7,033 across the world, and 2,033 in the southern the southern hemisphere. And so they're like, and this is in part in connecting to younger brother. It's like, so we essentially kind of have the means, and part of what the UA and some other organizations that we're going to be partnering with is like, okay, like, yes, a planetary call to coherent action, but then with the overarching like team humanity noble endeavor is how I'd like to state it, to reacquire their lands so that they can actually travel to make payments to these ancient sites, to reacquire a specific piece of land so that they can build a seed bank to be able to protect and preserve the seeds. Like this is essentially where the urgency and why they've come down from the mountain is kind of this larger global mission. Because again, they've said that once that has happened, and once they've been able to make these payments, and once this information ripples out to the planet and more people come into coherence and come back into that natural order and connection with the planet, then everything's going to shift. And then like they've stated that it's essentially already done. Now it's just like it's done energetically. It's just now taking the steps to actually make it happen in the physical.
Well, the seed bank in itself is incredibly important. It's incredible that you cannot patent what's in nature. So what Monsanto does is genetically modify seeds, and I'm pretty sure it makes no sense, but you can't use regular seeds now in farms, and that's like old news, I guess. You only had to buy these genetically modified seeds. It's just absolutely bonkers how much our reality is being coerced and created through corporations that just want to control the means of production. And really, all you need as a human is to be able to grow food, be able to eat and get clean water and a bit of shelter. If we lived a natural way, disease would be pretty foreign to us, right? The Mamos are
Yeah.
surviving out there without pharmaceuticals or vaccines. And, big pharma is only about 100 years old, right? It's not that much. I think, yeah, it's about 100, bit more than 100 years old. And
Yeah.
so how do we survive for thousands of years before that, right? And how did all the indigenous survive? And so it's getting back to this natural way of living. We won't need these diseases, or we won't have these diseases caused from the food we eat and all this disconnection. We're going to be able to resonate at a higher frequency, and to me that just means more joy, more peace, more awareness, and potentially other senses, or heightened senses. For me, I've experienced those, whether it's been through training or when I was in koala habitat for long periods of time.
Mhm.
You kind of get more in tune with nature, and it's just a different feeling. It's a different thought process. It's almost like the fogginess of your mind goes away. There's a bit of a fog for how we live and how we um, do things. Like I remember Carlos Barrios telling me he did this gathering of indigenous elders. And I was asking him and his daughter who their favorite was, and I forget what they called him, but there's this one guy that they came out, and everybody he was the favorite guy, and they were staying at their house in Guatemala, and he had a shower, and he goes, "This water's dead." And he went out to the local lake and bathed in there, and where he lived was out in nature, right? So if you could imagine the perception or the way of life or how different it would be to never be looking at a screen once, to be fully engaged with the environment, like a bird or an animal would. And I feel like what we lost in humanity's search for growth, which we want to grow and we want to expand and we want to explore and we want to improve with these tools and these technologies, but they've kind of taken over our spirit. They've taken over that balance with the connection with our earth and honoring and really understanding the circle of life of what we do and how it engages. And we're not talking about this Green New Deal where you use climate change to, take over the world and, and usurp it. We're talking about responsibility and understanding nature and understanding our relationship to everything,
Mhm.
taking what we need and not being, greedy, and just being mindful of our surroundings. And so that's just a comment I wanted to share. Do you want to add on to it?
Yeah, brother. I mean, so another dear brother that I met on this trip that I remembered. I feel like, as we come back into contact with each other and meet each other for the first time, it's just like meeting family, right? Like from lives past. And this is so Timoteo, and he's been really like, the last 4 or 5 years just basically living with the land, living outside, and so his perspective and the wisdom that he's gleaned from that is so profound. And so like we're talking about, like, the new technologies, like the 5-dimensional tech and free energy and like all the things that are I feel like that are coming, that are being birthed right now. And he's like, yeah, but can you imagine the like if all of those stones and crystals and everything that was in the earth gridded perfectly, and we actually just stayed tuned into that, like it's beyond any external technology that we're birthing at this time. And like to your point about, you know, these heightened senses, I feel like these are all steps, again, like coming full circle, these are all steps back to the origin, back to the capabilities that we had naturally. um, and if and I was going to say, if we had not gone the route that we have to develop all this stuff, but we obviously can't go backwards now, right? So now I feel like it's about like bridging that gap. So tuning back into the earth so that we come more fully online to these heightened senses, and to the expanded versions of who we truly are. And then like figuring out like what technologies we need, and again, like you said, like what are the necessities without going overboard, without continuing to kind of rape and pillage the earth, um, of those natural resources, so that like we can find balance, we can come to balance within and without, like within each other, within ourselves, towards each other, and with the earth, right? And so like what does that look like, and I feel like that's the, this cross pollination of all of this wisdom that we have, if we move forward as one tribe, as team humanity, right? It's like, okay, like what can we actually leave where it is, what is actually developed that we can utilize, and then how do we come back into order so that we can limit how much we have to pull from the earth. Because to have those, like some of the crystals returned, and some of the land maintained, and the payments being made, and our that depth of connection reestablished, it's like we wouldn't even need these things to have a conversation. It'd just be like, hey Matt, like what's going on, right? Like there'd be that, those heightened senses in our telepathic, like they, from my understanding, they have telepathic capabilities, the Mamos. So they basically like sit around and look at each other and yeah, 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 I understand what you're saying, you know, like, and I feel like we all have those capabilities when we come back to the natural order.
I love that. And I'm glad you brought that up because it was actually what I was going to bring up before you went down that rabbit hole. I had Crow 777 on. He has an incredible podcast, very wise individual. And one of the concepts that he shared that was new for me was the idea of the elite or the people who've kind of usurped the technology and became the ruling class of kind of putting out the technology before we already had it. So like before we would develop it internally. So let's just say telephones, but if we didn't have telephones, right, then would we have just naturally evolved into communicating in a different way? We don't know. It sounds like a bit of Star Trek and evolutionary kind of stuff, but it's interesting because what's happened is we have allowed technology to be a crutch, right? So we used to know how to navigate. How the heck did they navigate the seas using the stars back in the day? How do how, remember back in the day, your parents driving, kids won't know this, but with a map and written down instructions, asking people for help, like where the heck you're going, right? And now if we don't have that little dot exactly telling us where to go, we're almost useless. And so there is something to be said for that. And one of the theories he had was maybe this is our evolution, right? Maybe this is when a caterpillar becomes a butterfly and they're just trying to stall that as much as possible. And so rather than looking for this external technology to fix us, let's look to the internal technology, because even from our understanding of the body and the mind and the universe, which is very interesting and confusing and infinite, it does seem like that the body is the technology. It's the body that should be cultivated. And the more we rely on technology, we're kind of limiting that, and we've definitely lost balance. You know what I mean? It's like uh we're just using it and relying on it rather than developing our inner understanding, our inner knowing. And we don't even know how far that goes. For example, the Shaolin monks in China that could break stone with two fingers. Or if we teach our kids that telepathy is normal and it is possible, and we begin cultivating that. And just like in the same way, a simple way, you look at the 4-minute mile, right? Humans didn't think that that was possible. Or a deadlift. If you take in another culture and you see how much like somebody who trains can deadlift 1,000 pounds or 800 pounds, that's not normal. You know what I mean? But that's using the body as a technology, but just a simple weighted technology, right? But same with the Shaolin monks breaking stone. How do you do that? All they use was a tree and stone and meditation and intense practice to do something where it's far beyond what normal people think is possible.
Mhm.
And they're integrating the meditative aspect of that. So we don't really know how far this goes. And it's an invitation to come back to that technology. It's same with weapons, right? Like
Yeah.
if you go into the forest and you rely on a knife. Well, if you can make a knife, that's real knowledge. That's real gnosis. That's real understanding. You're not using a crutch. You're using your mind, your body, your understanding of nature to create from nothing. And that's another thing actually I learned from David Lombear is just like, it's like, yeah, I could build a canoe from nothing, like starting with no tools, no axe, no nothing. He could learn, build a whatever, chop down a tree, carve it out. And I've seen him do some of those things. Like, oh my goodness, right? Just to, start a fire with nothing. Apparently he had to learn 21 ways to start a fire with nothing. And, it was such an interesting thing. And as a side note, he goes, if you're afraid of the dark, learn how to start a fire with nothing. You'll never be afraid of the dark again. And, it's amazing how many grown adults are afraid of the dark. Like I have no shame in saying that a couple of years ago I was. And even now, sometimes I'm like, I feel that little tickle, like
Yeah.
because all those horror movies, you just imagine all the worst thing. So I trained through running through the forest at night in the dark, and like pitch black was horrifying. You know what I mean? It's just a horrifying experience. And so I'm someone who is, strong and knows martial arts and is fit, and I was still scared. And so it's an interesting thing because we live in nature, right? This little box is, and this artificial light is my safety. So it's like a bit of a disconnection. And so to overcome that and just get closer and closer to the earth, it removes a lot of that fear. It gives you more capability, more understanding. And that's one way, actually, an amazing way to train the senses. Because as I started to do it, all of a sudden I had like a sonar go on where like because I couldn't see, right? It was pitch black. Everything else, my ears tuned up, everything else was navigating what was going on. And this was like a forest trail with rocks and stumps and all kinds of stuff. And I got through totally fine. But the senses were massive. And so, I just say all that to say we have no idea what the limits of consciousness are. And rather than always looking for technology for the solution, what happens if we go in reverse and we look to nature and ourselves to see what's natural, what we're capable of, and that's going to be ultimately harmonious.
Absolutely. And that's exactly what they stated, is we have, and we always have had everything we need right here. Right. And you take away all the comforts and all the, and like you said, just sit in that space with that connection. And it's like everything we've ever needed is within. I love your point about training in the dark. I'm walking through the jungle here at times during the daytime, and I feel scared. I'm like, man, I hope there are no snakes around here. Like, I just do not want to encounter. I've got a thing for snakes, but especially in the deadly ones. But yeah, so I can imagine running through the jungle in the dark.
Yeah, I don't know if I would do it out there. I kind of understand what's going on. Like, I'm okay with a bear. A bear's going to kind of mind its own business, But I could do it in Canada, but like the jungle, no, I'm not doing that. I don't think it'd be another level. It'd be another level in the video game. You've done this here, now try this new experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, Lee, I'd love to ask, like, what else do you want to chat about, like, with your projects? Like, is the Mamos the most important thing? Because I know you're always working on a lot of different things, like with Thrive and Thrive Global, and you're connected to a lot of movers and shakers who are really doing their best to create a solution. And so I think that that's the important thing. Everybody that you're working with and that you're talking to, we're aiming to create a better world, to be cohesive, to be cooperative, to be helpful and find solutions. And so I'm just curious if there's another topic or thing that you're involved with you think is important to touch on.
Well, I mean, yeah, like I kind of tossed in the Unified Alliance there, and like I alluded to, it is the idea of bringing coherence to all of these seemingly different facets of this what I feel is one global movement towards unification, towards actually implementing solutions. I really feel like the intention behind the UA is to create this container or a platform so that we can educate on, you mentioned natural law earlier in the conversation, that we can actually educate on natural law, which I feel really weaves in things like jurisdiction, its connection to morality, whole brain thinking, like, and actually be able to tell the opposite side of the story that isn't or hasn't been told to date, right? So like, just as an example, like natural law would, as it pertains to jurisdiction, if we're looking at like courtrooms and statutes and all these things that are passed off as law, it's actually contract law. So there's a tacit agreement that happens, and people think that they're playing by the rules of like the Charter of Rights or the original republics in each country, when they're not. They've been duped into believing that they're playing out here, but they're actually playing in here. And so to have an understanding of that, and then beyond the original republics is like common law, and then beyond that is like spiritual law. So these spiritual laws, these natural laws exist that supersede and override the current statutes that are being employed on the planet, all across the planet. But people don't have an awareness of that. So how can we bring all of these different pieces together, and the researchers and the people that are really going down these rabbit holes to fight for our natural freedoms, to fight for our sovereignty, So that would be kind of one facet where these organizations can plug into the UA, and then we start this unified um, effort to really disseminate the information that's here. All right. The second component is to actually protect human rights. So kind of weaving in everything that I just said, and then the court cases that are being won, the medical investigations and research that's being done, like bring all of those people together so that we can actually. So again, if you're looking at this puzzle just with the natural order, or just with that jurisdiction, or just with the medical research, right, and you're looking at these things separately, there's an opportunity to dismiss it and go, yeah, I don't. Yeah, so what? But if we bring them together, all of a sudden it starts to clarify and crystallize this picture that is is the actual way it is, right? The third component is to actually be a gateway to all of these organizations and projects for investors, for resources, for tools, for people to flow into. It's like if this is really in resonance with you, and you're like, man, I want to join, Thick Red Line, because they're doing so much to educate officers on what natural law is, or I want to join, Thrive and work within the Solutions Hub, because they're taking solutions from all over the world and translating them into 43 languages, and then disseminating that information. Or I want to join Noble Goldman because I'm a coach and I have resources and materials that I want to get out there to build a community, and also to help that community and myself cross-pollinate this information and generate some revenue and share in revenue, right? So whatever that is, like being a gateway to those different projects for the funds, for the investors to actually be able to flow into. The fourth component is to actually create what I kind of defined or redefined as humanitarian excellence. So there are humanitarian efforts and nonprofits all over the world. Does that money ever actually go to the cause that it's saying it's going to? But to actually, or if you give somebody that's been on the street $1 million, well, chances are, because they haven't been taught how to be responsible with that money, they're going to be on the street again in a year's time anyways. So humanitarian excellence is providing the education and the tools necessary for all individuals to be solely self-sufficient, to be solely self-reliant. So what are those education components? What are those tools? What are those containers, right? And then the last one is, actually there's two more. So when we developed the logo, we wanted something that would embody and kind of depict like that connection to each other and the earth, and so this logo or sigil becomes almost like a representative and like an easy identification component to, okay, who are all the players, who, what tribes, what organizations, what countries are actually involved in this greater picture, in this greater movement. And then the last component is to provide containers and councils for us to come into council with each other, so that we can reflect with each other and to each other authentically, transparently, and vulnerably, and so that we can hold each other accountable. Because something that I've very recently gone through and learned is that, without that reflection, I mean, our shadows or our blind spots they're named aptly because we're not able to see them. So to be able to have these containers where that I'm going to call you on your shit, and I'm okay with that, and you're okay with that, so that we can reflect back to each other, so that we can hold each other accountable, so that we can maintain a higher frequency and a greater coherence to create an emergence for humanity, for where we all want to go. And that emergence is like, it's like the flock of birds, or the school of fish, or the different body parts. It's like all these organizations serve a purpose, but no one organization or individual is greater than or less than another. They're just different, and they're different pieces of this puzzle. And if we come together, we can start to all move together, right? Like the birds or the fish, or like the fingers on one hand know what the fingers on the other hand are actually doing, right? And the sum of the parts will create something so much greater and so much more extraordinary than we could ever imagine or ever accomplish individually.
I love that, man. And I feel like a lot of people are talking about that unification. It's obviously a massive challenge, whether you're talking about, yeah, the red line in Canada, or no more lockdowns, or some of the law groups, or whatever the case is. Most of them have or they're doing health freedom, right? Everybody has the same intent. It is going to be a longer haul to bring it together. Hopefully we can figure out a way to shorten that process, to unify, because we do have the same goals. And I'm reminded of Mark Passio's presentation on natural law, where he talked about being in the Church of Satan for years and studying Luciferianism. And he said the reason why they're kicking our butts is because they're incredibly well organized. They are so well organized. If you go to the World Economic Forum, you can sign up, and there's this digital map of every single thing that they want to do to organize society. And it's awful. And so it is organized to the detail of how they want to execute this plan. And it's going to be up to good people to create something else and then participate in that. And one of the things that I learned from my Indigenous teachers was that participation is required. We're going to need to do something. So what you're speaking about here, I kind of imagine as ways for people to get involved. Like, you can do something in your local community. You can do something in a group that you see that is already doing something. That's a great way. Anything will work. And then the people who are organized and have people under them, they can organize with something greater. And whether the case is this ultimate unification, or it's three people together, any kind of unification towards the same goal is going to be incredibly powerful. And it might be like some sort of herd mentality, where we flop it over really quick, and all of a sudden there's mass unification, which would be great. Because I'm noticing that right now in the law communities. With, I'm doing a law summit right now and connecting to all these different people. They all want the same thing, right? And so all of these leaders and people are connecting and figuring out the solutions and what the big problems are and what we can do about it. And so what would you recommend for the average person navigating these times, from what you've learned? Because maybe they're in a city and a job that they like or don't like, or maybe their life is falling around them, or they're uncertain about the future. Can they get engaged in with what you're doing with the Unified Alliance? Should they get involved locally? How would you suggest that they operate during these times that might be even more challenging moving forward? We're not really sure how things are going to go. We want to hope for the best, but also prepare for the worst. And that's that kind of thing about knowledge, right? If you get dropped off in the middle of a forest and you have no idea what you're doing, you're going to be terrified. And if you have all the skills, the know-how, the education necessary to survive and thrive, you're going to be okay. You're going to know that you're sorted and you're going to be all right. And so one of the things you touched on was accountability, to be able to produce, to have accountability to ourselves, to our friends, to our family, to be honorable, respectful, ethical, and empowered. And that way you're contributing to your community rather than taking from. And that's kind of what's going on. We don't know how to grow our own food or get our own clean water or do these different things. And so we're focused on what could be meaningless jobs, or jobs that don't contribute to the community, right? Or maybe they do, but not all, but a lot of people's they don't. And it kind of feeds the system rather than, inverse feeding the soul and then feeding the community. And that's a massive switch.
Yeah, absolutely, brother. And I feel like as you were speaking, what was coming through was so this, like I said, so much has been activated sitting with the Mamos, and this kind of map started to come through, and really it starts with the self, right? So what can you do in this moment? It's not going to cost you any more money. It's not gonna, like create a necessity for travel or any of this stuff. You can choose to eat differently, healthier, right? You can choose to do some movement, right? I mean, there are all kinds of coaches. There's all kinds of free content. There's all kinds of paid content. So do something that is going to allow you to feel a little bit better, right? And that's kind of like, I see it as this, like this funnel system, right? And the top component is like, hey, what can I do? Or so let me back up a second. If we were to take it and self-assess where we are on this continuum from order to disorder, from love to fear, from chaos to the origin, from disharmony to harmony, right? If we self-assess and say, like, man, I'm super stressed, I don't have any energy, I'm so busy, like I'm just running around trying to pay the bills and take care of the family, and whatever it is. Okay, like I'm feel like I'm pretty disconnected. I feel like I'm super fearful right now. I don't know what's going to come next. Okay, so this is where I am. What are the things that I can do to start to take some of that power back? I can eat healthier. I can turn the news off. I can change my mindset. I can change my conversations. I can start some movement. Okay, I've done that for a period of time. I actually feel a little bit better. What else is there? I've heard meditation is, I always kind of thought it was kind of funny, but okay, yeah, let me try some meditate mindfulness. Okay, so being aware of my thoughts. Yeah, meditation, binaural beats, that's helped me drop in a little. Wow, I feel a little bit better. What's next? Purpose. Never really thought about it. Do I have a purpose? Why am I here? Is it just to like run around and pay these bills and like do all this stuff that is making me crazy all the time? Or, okay, so you start to sit with your purpose a little bit. And then the next part down is like coming back into connection, like calling old friends, calling family. If you're still in a little bit of fear of like connecting with people in person, like make those connections. If you have the ability to start reconnecting with the earth and start growing your own vegetables and that sort of thing, that would be the next one down. And then it's like, so it doesn't matter where you are on this continuum, right? There's always something, and kind of takes us back full circle to the beginning. There's always something that we can do to feel better now, to move more, into the expansion of the infinite self within this infinite game that we're playing. And so what are the things that are right in front of you that you can do to feel a little bit better, to change your mindset, to reconnect in and with yourself, with others, and then with the earth? And as you do that, as you come through this funnel system, I'm seeing this like almost like a database that's created. Like, share that story, share what you have done, and the changes that you've made, and the differences in how it's made you feel from before to where you are now, every step of the way, with your loved ones, with your family, even on social media if you feel like it, right? And there's going to start to be this commonality, and that's where like you can connect with me, because we want to create this database where tens of hundreds of thousands of hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people are sharing their story of where they've gone on from this journey from fear to love, from disconnection to connection. And the more people that share that story, there's going to be these commonalities that start to show up. And through these commonalities, it's going to give others permission that are kind of haven't taken this journey just yet, to say, wow, like so many people are taking their power back, or reconnecting, or feeling better, or having more energy, or dealing with less stress, are beginning to live the lives and create the life that they want. Maybe I can do it too.
Beautiful, man. Absolutely love all that. And it reminds me of what's going on with this law summit, because there's themes that are coming through, and one of them is just accountability and responsibility. We have to start with where we are, and whether you're in a big city or a rural area, or things are going great or terribly, or whatever the case is, it all starts with you and where you are, and these simple things. That's what you can control today, because ultimately this universe, we don't have control of it. It is beyond us. We can try as hard as we can to make everything safe and predictable for eternity, but we know it doesn't work like that. You could die in a car crash, something could happen. And so that's where that faith element comes in. And I feel like what's happening here from the negative side of things is this massive attempt for fear. People, we're they really need fear to deceive us, to make us give up our free will. And so to understand that you're not alone, and that if you're on the side of righteousness and goodness and truth, you're connected and supported by a force that is beyond any kind of evil that could exist. And one of the things I actually read recently, where if we're looking into the law stuff, it's pretty quite obvious that there are people who are, you know they're Luciferian in the sense that that's their religion. Their idea is to harm and take and own. That's what they believe. That's what their doctrine is, right? And they actually exist, and that's what's going on in the law system and these systems of the world. They believe they're the owners and rulers. That's all that is. And so that's not on the side of life and goodness and fairness and truth and cooperation. And so one of the things that I read today that I really loved was the idea that they want you to think that they're orchestrating this. But if you look in the Bible in these previous times, it was God that struck down the wicked. And I was like, oh, what a paradigm shift, So it's like, yeah, people are going to get harmed, but do you see a whole bunch of really good people who are advocating for freedom, who want the best for you, being harmed? No, they're going to be okay. But other people who are shaming and guilting and yelling at you and, wanting the matrix to stay the same and take everything from you, maybe they're the ones that are going to end up having a difficult time as things move forward. And I really loved what you shared there, because yesterday, in the group mastermind call that I'm doing weekly, I was thinking about these things because I was struggling, and I was like, how do I ensure that as I'm taking on all of this kind of fear and crap from the external world, to be aware of what's going on, how can I ensure that I stay in peace and optimization and truth and service to other people? Because, I don't know, let's say the boat sinks, right? And you freak out, you're probably just going to drown. But if the boat sinks and you get yourself stable, and then it's all of a sudden there's a wave coming, you're like, oh crap, there's another thing coming. You need to be more aware, and then you're able to kind of process what's going on and find solutions. And so even though it might be a little bit challenging out there with the information, we are capable of adapting to any circumstance that might arise. And some of the things that we came up with is this: first, cultivate your connection with God, creator, and spirit. Second is gratitude. Thank you, creator, for everything, for having everything I need today. And if you've a lot of the podcast guests who've had nothing, right? Everything taken away, they're grateful for anything. I have food, water, shelter, and even if I don't, I have faith I'm going to get that thing. I'm created, or I'm going to be taken care of. Positive stimulus that you talked about, the 5 gates, and taking in positive mental nutrients, solutions, education for what you need, contribution to other people, 3 kind acts, meditation in the internal world, prayer and journaling, right? Connection with creator, and then how you respond in journaling, and just getting your inner world on paper and observing what's happening, not getting emotionally attached, and allow yourself to be guided. Know that if you're walking the righteous path with truth and justice and goodness, you're going to be guided no matter how hunky-dory or wild it might get in the external world. And that's all shifting over into the side of faith. And it can be very challenging. And on the other side, what they're really relying on is your fear, right? And so all of this is to overcome fear, but nothing there says you got to go down to South America, that you got to start an organization, that you got to do anything different than you're doing in the household that you're in the situation that you're in. You can literally just transform your inner world, and maybe you're going to, share that vibration, that energy, that feeling with your family. And maybe that's all you're going to be able to do. But that will be transformational. That will be night and day for your family members, for your community, for your friends. It will be night and day. You will be the light in that situation. And maybe the universe is only asking you to do that. all those loved ones that are so lost, you remain in peace. You remain empowered. You remain optimistic and connected to the creator, knowing it's going to be okay and you're going to find a solution. And how powerful is that? And when we do that, that energy can bring us into a bigger current for organizations, for things like you're doing with the UA and other things and other teachers, that we're all moving in that same current. And it is cohesive, it's cooperative, and there is no competition in it. And then as we all take ownership in ourselves, that's how that ripples up to a greater effect for the world. And whether there's a tipping point scenario, or that we can only walk ourselves out and then hold the lamp up on the way. Right. This is the way to truth. This is the way to be, without conflict. This is the way to peace and harmony. Right. And all are welcome. Right. And people will select either to engage in that or to not. But if you're by yourself, you might be the one leading the way. And that's the challenge. So don't believe that you're alone just because that's your scenario, because I'm getting a lot of that.
Mhm.
You're just the leader in that scenario.
Absolutely. And I mean, by all means, connect with us. Like this is what we do, right? Provide support, provide assistance, provide information, provide connections and community. And so if you do find that you're in that space where, you're kind of, you feel like you're alone, as Matt said, you're not. We're here for you, and we want you to reach out. I want you to reach out. I want you to connect, because there are tons of people that I can connect you with, right? And whether it's doing calls or just calling other people or doing masterminds, like there are tons of ways in which you can connect with the global community, the global family that you know that does see things this way, that is moving towards greater coherence, more love, more connection, more wholeness, right? And those are the things that I'm passionate about, and I'm pretty sure you're in the same area, my brother, and I really feel like as we continue to unify these pieces of the puzzle, it's just going to provide more light for those that are seeking it. More light, more connection, and as we light that path, I feel like more and more people are going to be on the journey with us.
100%. Yeah. And as I think about the lit path, it just starts as like with a few little lights, right? But as people start to migrate, you're going to be able to see that light from further and further. And just like if in Costa Rica, which you've been, right? If there's a fire on the beach, people show up. It's just the most primal thing ever. People
Yeah.
move towards the light, and right now it's just really blanketed in darkness, and it's harder to find. So we need to be accountable for ourselves to be the light, and that just means to be peaceful. It means to be honorable. It means to have positive intents for your fellow man, to do your best, simple things that are not outside of anybody's capability, to stand up for what's right and true. And over time, you're going to develop your strength, your courage, and your inner light in your inner world and your inner vibration. And that's going to shine out to other people. And when we unify more and more, it's really gonna ripple out, and gonna be a beautiful invitation for those who were sleeping along the way. And hopefully we'll have a nice cocoa for them and warm bed and a beautiful spot, because we want everybody to participate in that. So brother, this is always a great pleasure to talk to you. I always love what you're working on. Your updates are always inspiring, walking the path, a lot of solutions. So it always fires me up to know that you're out there connecting to a lot of people who are committed to finding the solutions but taking action. And I feel like that's a huge distinction in what you do, is finding the action takers. And so is there anything that you want to leave the listeners with, or where do you want to send them for more connection, more support, more work? Where should they go?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to check out the Unified Alliance, it's unifiedalliance.world. If you want to connect with me, you can do so at Lee-Davy, and it's davy.com. We're doing some really cool things with our connected community out of Vancouver, plugging into Noble Goldman, and that's going to be essentially a community building, resource and content sharing cross-pollination platform with coaches and facilitators from all around the world, as well as an opportunity to generate some revenue if that's something that you choose. So that's happening, and then going to be offering some more courses, some day-long like online workshops and courses, as well as retreats. But yeah, I mean, just if any of this resonated at any level, just reach out and do so through the lee-davy.com site. And yeah, let's just have a conversation. And if I'm able to support you in your journey or connect you with other people, or if you feel a resonance with the Unified Alliance and have a piece of that puzzle, whether you're a lawyer, a doctor, just an individual, an organization, it's a global thing that we've set it up for, that the intention is to really unify and bring coherence. And so, the old saying, something my dad used to always say, many hands makes lighter work. So, the more hands on deck that we have, we can start to come into council with each other to bring greater coherence, to hold each other accountable, and to move forward as one, as it was meant to be.
Beautiful. Love it, brother. Well, I appreciate you and everything that you do, forging the path and always looking for cooperation, cohesion, and bringing everybody together for the same unified intent to make the planet a better place. So I appreciate you and everything that you do. And thanks again for coming on the show and sharing your work and some of your beautiful and amazing journeys. And I look forward to learning more about what the Mamos and Kogis and the indigenous want to bring forward as far as wisdom and supporting them in their mission to get the word out and their teachings out, so the entire planet can benefit. So thanks for being there in person to share the message with us.
Absolutely, my brother. Love you so much. I love what you're doing. You're always an inspiration, and it's always such an honor for me to come on and have this. We've had this connection since Egypt, and it just continues to expand. So yeah, man, thanks for being the light, and thanks for being on the front lines, doing the work there in Canada, while some of us kind of piss off to other places. Still doing the work, but not in the fire as quite as much. So
yeah, well, I appreciate the kind words, and I'll keep the chip on my shoulder until you get your ass back to communist Canada. Just in the front row taking bullets as you're out there just in the forest. It's like, oh man, I'm in Costa Rica, I'm in Florida, I'm in Texas. All these places are free. This is amazing. I've had the best year ever. Like, damn it, man. I can't even go to the gym. Yeah, man, but we're all doing it. You got to be out there. So thanks, buddy. I appreciate you, and I look forward to where we're gonna be in a year and two, and like on the full other side of this. I know it's gonna be beautiful. So thanks for doing what you do as well.
Absolutely, brother. Sending you a shield of love.
I'll take it. Thanks. See you guys. Have a great day. Bye.
Peace out.